Welcome to Building the Black Educator Pipeline, the place where we talk to real people and the real work doing the real struggle. I am your host, Shayna Terrell, educator activist dedicated to the lifelong struggle of freedom and liberation for my people. What's up to all my co-conspirators out there? So today we are super excited. We are welcoming our guest, Jason B. Allen, educator, activist, blogger, podcaster. I mean, all the things, all right? Founder of educational entities. So Jason joins us today. We're going to be discussing Black men in education, current events in education, and how we can really help our Black community strive through education. Jason, what's up, brother?
Listen, I am super excited and honored to be on the show. I feel like everybody I know has been on, and it's like, you know, the waiting game, like, okay, my time is coming soon. It's coming up. I'm next in line. So I am super excited to be here, and just wanted to start out by first saying thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. And I just get excited to hear people be like, listen, I was waiting for the call. I'm like, oh, my bad. I didn't know. But that prompts me to say, listen, guys, any fabulous, phenomenal, strong educators out there that you feel like would be good for the show, just hit us up. Cause Jason was definitely on our list. So we are excited that you are here today, brother. For sure.
Same here. I'm excited to be here. Definitely excited to be here.
Yes. So we like to start out with our guests telling folks a little bit about themselves. Like, what can you share with us about who you are, about your work, past and present? Like, what should the listeners know about Jason B. Allen?
Let me tell you, this is hilarious being on this end, because that's exactly what I do to my guests that come on the podcast. So I'm excited to be able to do what I ask people to do. So I'm Jason B. Allen. I live here in the great city of Atlanta, come from a family of educators as far back as the early 1900s on both sides of my family. I have the honor of being able to do my life work, which is leading our family's foundation. It's named after my great grandmothers on both sides. Both my mom and dad were raised by their grandmothers, with my mom by her grandparents, but both of their grandmothers' names are Lily. And so after they passed away, my dad, who founded our family business, also founded our foundation. And I kind of say it was his gift to me. Because he's still running the business, but he was like, hey, I created something for you to run. And so being able to support grandparents and seniors, which is an underserved community in public education, being able to support them, provide for them is amazing work. So that's what I do outside of my work with the National Parents Union as a national organizing director, and also through educational entities that I founded really about 10 years ago, but I really got it off the ground about 3 years ago. And so here we are today, but that's a little bit about me.
That's dope. I love that. And you're an educator, correct?
Yes.
Are you currently teaching in the classroom?
Okay. So I'm in year 18, but it's my first year out of the classroom, whether I'm a teacher, school leader, district administrator. It's my first year not connected to that sense at all. I'm leading organizing work for parents who are wanting to see more in the educational settings for their kids. So I'm still connected, but just not in the classroom. Yeah.
Wow. So
once a teacher, though, always a teacher. I'm a veteran in the game now. I will say that. I look young, thank God. But I've been in the game for a minute. So I'm just in a different avenue. I try to do 20 years at least. You know, in that school setting, but I made it to 18, which is much longer than a lot of people.
Yes. I mean, that's a lot of dedicated years. But tell us about your journey to being an educator. What inspired you to get into education?
Okay. So I'm glad you asked that. Love to share this story. So, I always give the acknowledgement to my dad, who taught me so much. As a child, and he really was the one that opened up doors. I will never forget, when I was a young child, my dad gave me the book for Malcolm X's, autobiography. And of course, when the movie came out in the 90s, you know, he was like, okay, we're going to watch it. So whatever, even as I was in elementary school, You know, my dad was teaching me like, this is how the world is though. So you have to see this. And when you do come across these things, you'll be able to better navigate it. So I always shout out my daddy being my very first and forever teacher. But my very first black male educator, Mr. Gordon, his son, God rest his soul, was my classmate. And we grew up in the same community. So I came from an era and a part of Atlanta where your teachers were your heroes because they were in your neighborhoods. They were the ones who were showing you what it meant to be a community activist, a community builder, giving back and putting back into the place where you live and reside and call home. So Mr. Gordon was my fourth grade teacher. And one of the things that I have and continue to do when I teach is I implement historical facts. And that came from him. He integrated Atlanta's history with civil rights, how it went throughout the South. Like he made that so real in our fourth grade classroom. So much so that when I was in fifth grade for our end of the year, you know, we go on a class trip, right? You know, you're in fifth grade. It's like we're going to Six Flags. But that was the year in 1993, I advocated for us to do a community project based off of what I had learned in fourth grade from Mr. Gordon. And I was like, if we're transitioning out, we should leave more than just, you know, we were promoted, right? And we went to Six Flags. We should leave a legacy saying that we are giving back to our community. So the school, since 1993 until this year, they actually still have their fifth graders do a community service project. And we celebrate that because that's my legacy in a sense of it was inspired by a black male teacher. And so that's also what inspired me to want to go into teaching. Long story, but it was worth. I got to highlight Mr. Gordon. He's an OG. He was in the community. He taught me so much around the power and the art of teaching. So I want to give him that time, even if it cuts out some of my other questions, but I got to give him that shine. 1993.
Listen, I'm down with that. And Mr. Gordon's getting his own spotlight right now, because at the end, we'll have you thank a few black teachers, but we want to shout out Mr. Gordon for his inspiration.
Most definitely.
And setting you on a path to becoming an educator. That was a good story. I like that. And again, because in fifth grade, to have that level of thought, like, guys, we need to do more than just want to go to Six Flags. There's probably a couple kids like, shut up. We ain't doing that. But the inspiration, you know, yes, I'm just laughing. Like,
it's another side of me too, because I was like, oh, okay, so but let me tell you, my peers, they showed up. Everybody came on. They didn't really have a choice because the teachers were gonna make them. But I love my people. You know, I was like, hey, the same way I am now.
You like,
I was like that in fifth grade.
Yes, brother, we're gonna do this project.
Yeah, we're doing this.
I'm with it. Listen, I want to go back to something that you said when you shared a little bit about yourself that sparked some interest in me. You talked about seniors being the most underserved in public education. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? That was something.
Yeah, a lot of people don't recognize that. I actually learned this about maybe 12 years ago when I was a district administrator in Atlanta Public Schools. We had a new superintendent coming in, Dr. Chris Starford. I love Dr. C. She was a champion for social emotional learning and family engagement. Mm-hmm. And so as I was taking her around the city when she first came to Atlanta and was getting ready to start on the job, we were going to different communities and she was so intrigued about the family dynamics in our communities. And so that gave me an opportunity to really elevate the need for family engagement in Atlanta Public Schools based off of this population of seniors and grandparents who are raising school-age children and they're not being supported. They're the ones that have come to the PTA meetings and I'm sending donuts to the teacher because we know how hard you're working and they're really old school. You need somebody to come up and volunteer. Let's do it. Kids need somebody to walk them to the bus stop or, you know, seeing the kids walking down the street. That was one of the projects that I had grandmothers doing in the mornings. They would be out there on breakfast duty. Did you eat breakfast, baby? Did you eat breakfast? And the families, everybody in the community knew that's what they would do. Sometimes people would donate to them. But being able to be in a space with a district administrator, like a superintendent and board members, and educational leaders to show them what's happening in the community and why it's important for us to be intentional about programming that supports the continuation of education at home. Because grandparents, other relatives are teaching things to our students that may not align with curriculum, but it does align to culture. And so I feel like as educators, we have a greater responsibility as the professionals, as the gatekeepers of the art of teaching, to make sure that we're reaching all audiences. And the advocacy for grandparents and seniors has opened up a door for the conversation around generational families that are raising kids. So yeah, that's a little bit more about that advocacy space and what I'm doing with grandparents and seniors.
Yeah. I don't hear people talk about that a lot. So it kind of leaves them as a lost or forgotten population who have a big role in raising, and supporting our young people, and to even think about involving them, giving them leadership roles, or supporting them and supporting their grandkids, right? We never think about the hardship that brings on some of our grandparents, right?
Listen, you have to visit liliesfoundation.org. We have an online blog. Of course, I'm a storyteller, and being able to tell the stories of these grandparents. We have a signature card series that we do because grandparents love to get things in the mail. I love to get things in the mail. So
they do. They
people
like
that receive our cards are like, wow, we get to read about the grandparents' story. And I'm sharing this because the point that you made is so powerful. People always say, wow, I never hear anybody talk about this. And I never would have thought that, oh, this is a reality. Our counterparts know this because the opioid crisis has forced a lot of our white counterparts to have their kids being raised by their parents. They're still in a family structure. They may still be able to see mom and dad because they're away, getting support, right? But in our community where, communities, because it's not just one, but our communities, we see a lot of the crack epidemic and the illegal guns that are dropped in our communities. It's the same crisis in a different form, but our grandparents' stories are not being told or elevated, and the support is not there for them. So thank you for giving me that space.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that subject to this space, because it is a subject that we have not really delved into and talked about. Again, when we talk about education, building a Black educator pipeline, we talk about people who are grandparents' age in an ancestral sense, right? Like we talk about the great things that they did to build the foundation for us, the fight to freedom, the resistance. That's how we talk about them. We don't talk about them in the current, as current heroes and current supporters and, current contributors actually to building a Black educator pipeline and what that means. Again, we talk a lot about, education and current teachers on the show, which is important, but I appreciate you, and I'm sure they do, for lifting up them and their stories, and their contributions to current education. Like I said, when you said it, I was like, that's a subject. Like that's something to be talked about in terms of definitely community engagement in generational families.
Yes, that's my life work. So I will forever be doing that as long as my days continue. That will be my forever work. So I will always be doing that work through Lily's Foundation and creating a space for these conversations to happen, and letting people know that there's something you can do.
Yeah, I love that. Now, your life's work and Lily's Foundation is a piece of you, but you have just recently started an organization called Educational Entities.
Yes.
Tell us about that. What inspired you to do that?
Well, it's the art of storytelling. And so even though I come from a family of educators, my dad, being the first entrepreneur, actually does storytelling. My dad is a printer, and he started out printing in the 90s when he saw a need in the community. One of my classmates, you have to pause when you tell some stories, even though it's years later, one of my classmates was murdered due to gang violence. And my daddy realized that there are so many people that are falling victim to them, but none of the professional printers wanted to go into the hood. Nobody wanted to go into the projects. Nobody wanted to go into the areas where, it was like the deviants, they live here. That's what they referred to people who lived in the hoods in Atlanta. I can't speak for everywhere, but I know in Atlanta. And my father started telling the stories of those who were slain due to gang and gun violence. beautiful people, but their stories weren't being told. And so I'm sharing that because my father's work through our family's business, which is Allen's printing company, is what motivated me to start Educational Entities. Our organization focuses on storytelling, but telling the stories of those who are not served, not valued, not uplifted through educational institutions, whether it's higher ed, whether it's, pre-K. The foundation is a part of Educational Entities. We support the blog with telling the stories of grandparents, but also we're running a series on what grandparents may need right now, because it's the reality that these grandparents are up in age. And so are they prepared for what happens if they transition while they're still in care of their grandchildren? What's next? Are your affairs in order? So we share information through the form of storytelling. Lily's Foundation is one. Break by Stock Collective is another organization that we do storytelling with through Ashe Magazine. Now, this also happens to be my cousin's business in the West Coast. She's been in education for 20 plus years, family of educators, right? And she is doing storytelling through her organization. They have a magazine that elevates 100 Black voices, but also Black female voices, which was the magazine was founded by my baby cousin, her daughter. So we support organizations that want to tell stories. Students for Equity is a part of Educational Entities. We're elevating the voices of students to tell their stories in their own way, without parents, guiding them, without teachers telling them, oh, make it sound pretty and say it in this way. We created a space for them to be able to tell their stories. We have teachers that have organizations that are a part of Educational Entities who have lost their contracts because they have been on podcasts, they have been at rallies, they have been standing in the gap for teachers and parents, saying this is what resources are needed for us to truly reach Black and brown children. And school districts across the state of Georgia have snatched their contracts. And so we have been able to create a space through our blog, The Educator's Voice, and also through a podcast called That Way on Wednesdays, which is led by teachers who have gone through those experiences. And they're having really solid conversations with students around the impact of CRT and the removal of cultural literature that represents our people and our stories in the classrooms in education. So that's a little bit about Educational Entities. We are kind of elevating our platform to lift up the voices of those who are not heard.
Yes. I love the student section for students to be able to tell their stories and giving folks who have been done wrong in terms of injustice, like being at a rally or using their voice doing a podcast and their jobs got snatched, giving them an avenue to elevate and speak about that. I think that's really, really dope.
Yeah, it's another part to it, but I think that we were going to get into Speak Black Land, so I intentionally left that aspect out to kind of focus in on the other area of what Educational Entities is doing.
Oh, most definitely. Speak Black Man. So that is where you are my fellow podcaster.
Yes, that's my podcast.
Yes, tell us about it.
And it's intentionally elevating the stories of Black men. We need a space, right? Where it's also, it's focused on liberation. That's the main idea. So we get the chance to focus on healing. Right now I'm in season 3 and I've been bringing on Black fathers. I've been bringing on Black men who are healers. We've been really getting into conversations around why healing is needed, in our community. And, it's important, particularly, I hate labels, but I also acknowledge that, I have a husband. And so when people find that out, they're like, wait a minute, this brother is like advocating for the Black family and the Black unit and helping Black men who have wives to really show up and be better for their wives. And I'm like, yeah, because at the end of the day, this is for us. And we have to really work our way out of how we begin to oppress each other through labels, through titles, through systems that, again, were created in times by people who did not see our value. They did not want our value to be exposed, and they did not want us to thrive in the days called life. So
Yes.
I'm very intentional about that. We have a myriad of conversations on Speak Black Man. Speak Black Man also houses my book series. My first book is going to be coming out called Suit, Swag, and Success. And it's taking strategies as a teacher, but also as an organizer to really help us meet Black young boys where they are. And the people who are raising them. So it's a playbook, and it'll be coming out in 3 parts, but we also have the Black Male Educator Appreciation Week, which is, if I could say this without him being like, y'all know I hate people saying my name, but Brother Sharif El-Mekki, I don't refer to him as a mentor, but really as an advisor. He has opened so many doors, created so many ways for us to be able to show up authentically and share our stories and come together and advocate and elevate for Black males, period. He was a big inspiration for me, even getting with my students, creating the service learning project. My students saw the need for us to have more Black teachers because they said everybody needs to have a Professor JBA. And so we started this 4 years ago at the Capitol to honor Black male educators and teachers here in Georgia, inspired by Brother Sharif's work with the Center for Black Educator Development. So I wanted to share that piece of the story too, to say that in Georgia, we are dedicated to helping change that 2%. And we're looking to elevate our work as the years go. But that Speak Black Man, it brings all of those things to the table. I would say that it is the largest area of educational entities. It's the area that I'm most passionate about as an advocate, because since 2001, I started an organization with my mentor and my best friend called Black Males with Initiative. We went to a PWI and we realized that there were no Black professors, and the Black students were really on their own. I mean, and this was like, we discovered that our college was built on a slave burial ground. So that kind of community background, makeup, political decision makers in that space. And so we started doing that work of advocating for Black males in 2001 and still are doing it. So that's it. That's Speak Black Man, dedicated to elevating the voices of Black men in all types of conversations to help us build, empower, and heal us.
Yes. You better speak, Black men. Okay.
Most definitely.
Yes.
Elevating fatherhood too, because again, fatherhood is unique. It's important, highlighting fatherhood and then also teaching brothers the importance of motherhood at the same time. I don't even think people understand how deep that is, because we can celebrate, elevate, empower, and also teach Black men at the same time. So see, we focusing on brothers, we elevating brothers, but we're also teaching brothers the importance of respecting, loving, elevating, appreciating, being in partnership with our sisters as well. And I feel like a lot of those conversations are not being had, and that level of accountability for our Black men to respect our sisters first is something that definitely needs to be advocated more.
Oh, I love that. And I think those conversations are the conversations that begin to change the narrative around Black men. Because when you begin to talk about Black men and fatherhood, right, we go with what society tells us about Black fathers, or what's commercialized about Black fathers. It's not true to what is really happening in our communities with Black fathers. And I think, probably several people have read the study about Black fathers, when it's like they're with their kids more than any other race. Yeah, right. Just because they're not married to the mothers of their kids doesn't mean that they're not fathers or being present in their children's lives. And that's always an important narrative to lift up. And I love to hear Black men talk about fatherhood and the importance of fatherhood. Because the narrative that's just sold about it, it's disgusting. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I want to add this and say that this season, we've had a couple of Black fathers who have done bids, or they have been in the prison system, and their goal was, I got to get back out because I have to be there for my kids. And the stories of these Black men who, I got caught up in the system. It is what it is. I learned from that, and now I was able to get back out and reclaim my family. Those stories are important to me because in teaching, I realized that the impact of those fathers being able to come back and get involved in their kids' lives, it changed the pathway that their children would get on.
Yes.
And so those stories are important for more people to hear that, you know what? Let's not knock down the brother just because he was in the prison system, because there are many brothers that go in and who do come out and are trying, they are fighting every day to get with their kids, build back their families and get connected. And so we have created the space for them to share their stories as well. And for people to really start to change their mind, changing the narrative. Storytelling. Yes. That's what we're doing.
It has to be. And again, even to lift that up and center that and what that means in education and how we a lot of times just prejudge or have our own thoughts and values that we place on Black fathers, assuming that they're not going to be involved, assuming that kids don't have a dad, or assuming because the dad is away, locked up, or not physically in a state with a kid, that they don't feel like you should have a right or a say so over that kid, right? Yeah. I mean, how we never place those judgments and make those assumptions the opposite way.
Well, we know because education is still classified and considered to be a pink collar job. So it's still even the notion that, well, why do we even need Black male teachers? Why do we need Black men to show up to the school anyway? Because, you know, we're doing all of the work. And this is not even coming from sisters. This is coming from women who are leading the educational field, because for them, this is our power. But I don't want to go into that because they'll be trying to fight us. But I mean, we know that education was, it's in the books. This is the power of history and the power of books. Mm-hmm. We know from white politicians from many years ago that education is a system that was created. Yes, we're going to say to educate children, but we realistically know that it was for white men to be able to control and dominate other industries and to give their women, their wives, a sense of power outside of their social clubs. Say, oh, you have a professional entity. Like, people still don't want to believe that white women still are leading nonprofit organizations centering education and leading educational institutions across this country. And people don't want to admit that, but they're following a system. This was to create wealth. It was also to create space for white men to be able to go out and do more without me having to explain to you what's going on, something to keep you distracted and to keep you busy. And we're going to say it's in the name of educating children, because we really just think of y'all as babysitters to go and sit with these kids. We don't care what you do with the kids. We'll give you a few dollars and go do. Come on, that's why teachers don't get paid what we should be getting paid. That's why there is no urgency around, oh, we need to really do something with these school buildings so that we can change the infrastructure and, you know, innovate how kids are able to get fresh and clean water in schools, which still schools across this nation can't provide that. Why? Because there is no real acknowledgement and investment in this area because it's pink collar. It's because it speaks to the American value of women. But
listen,
brothers, that's why we talk about this on Speak Black Man, so brothers can understand that, oh, it's not just targeting women, but it's targeting our kids. It's targeting our family. It's targeting our legacy. It's targeting our control. Whatever way we need to spin the narrative, it's impacting all of us. So if you really are concerned about, you know, being able to have anything, your concern should be with education and what is being pushed down to the masses of Black and brown people, to the least of them, because we know that the Black elite and the upper class is going to make it. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's be honest about that, too. Let's be honest about that, too. Yep. But we have so many HBCUs. We have so many local organizations that are grassroots that don't get the big funding. They don't get the acknowledgement. They don't get the support, but they're in the trenches saving those kids who have been truly left behind, forgotten about. And they are the ones carrying the cure for everyday diseases. Because the modern ones, they already had the cures for. They already tested and experimented with us to have those things. But I ain't gonna go there either, because I don't want the CIA coming after us. So let me not get too much. But
we be wanting all the smoke on Building Black Educator Pipeline, and it is Black History Month. Okay, so you better. It is,
and this is history, but it's in books. You're not gonna be able to look up a lot of these things because I always say this to my students: the white man was brilliant in that everything that they doing is right in our face. Most of it is in books that they know people aren't going to read and pick up. And it's funny to me because it's like, we know that, but still, it's
and
like
some of it is not even a sense of brilliance. It's still the thought process and it's not even cunning because it's more of the, I dare you. You can read it, you can know about it, but what you going to do about it? And I think that
part too, that is the real gangster part. They know ain't nobody, because they showed us what they did to Malcolm. I mean, the pictures are really on the other side of me, but I have local, national, global civil rights grassroots activists on my wall. It was a method of me teaching my students during the pandemic. And when we speak about people that they may not have seen their pictures before, I'm like, yeah, they were killed. And here's why they were killed, because this is what they were doing. And it goes back to liberation versus assimilation. And it's a hard pill to swallow because some things are black and white. And if I am for liberation, there are certain things that I have to subscribe to, certain things that I have to do. And if I'm going to assimilate, I also know what the cost of that is. I know what I have to give up. I know what I'm not able to do. And so we have to be realistic about these things and figure out where do we fit in? Because if we're truly going to liberate black minds in America, a lot of people, black, white, indifferent, are not going to be happy because black minds and black bodies have made people billionaires. They have made them wealthy, have built generational wealth for various classes of people. And I'm saying this specifically because this is what I teach my students who are going to go out and change the world. We're looking for the enemy to be white. And that's where we're getting confused. The enemy is not just, we ain't learned nothing from the slave trade. The enemy is not just the white devil that people want to say. Wake up, black people. It's different. It's deeper than that. It's a spiritual context to this as well. But, you know, religion in America is a system. And how dare we get into that, right? So really what you're talking, people would say, how dare you get into any of this? I mean, the assimilation versus liberation conversation can go on and on because people think that they can get liberation still under certain conditions, right? People feel like it's a conditional thing and it's not. You got to be willing at many points to sacrifice it all if you really want to fight for true liberation. And I know we talked about the pink collar, like you said it, but I want to go back to it because what you said was super, super powerful. And what was ringing in my head as you were talking about the profession and like white women, this being a way for them to have power and the structure and why the pay rate is the way it is. There's a reason why, even if you look across education, white women stay at a certain ceiling. There's a reason why principals, right? Or people who are superintendents or high level administrators, it's dominated by men. How could a profession that is over dominated by women, right? 80 to 85% not be the face then of the principal population. But let's go here. I want to help the people.
Please.
I want to help the people. This is one of the reasons why I ran for school board, which now in Atlanta, we have an all female led board. I'm not knocking it at all. The power dynamics have shifted because we have a board that is serving primarily and predominantly black and brown children that's still above 70%, which is still large numbers. The majority of the board is ran by white women. And I get it. You know, I get it. But I also look at the dynamics of, have these white women started organizations that are for assimilation or are they for liberation? Have they been teachers in the classroom? What parent organizations have they been a part of and what initiatives are they supporting? Because I always ask people who run for school board, well, what is your work? And this is what I tell the local stakeholder. We also got to get out of Democrat and Republicans. And, the Democrats are telling us to vote for this person. Yeah, baby. Didn't the Democrats tell y'all to vote for all these people on the school board? And now y'all are sitting out here crying, talking about, the superintendent in Atlanta has had the school board approve this $95,000 bill for this award ceremony or this luncheon or whatever it was. We call it the traditional dog and pony show. No knocking APS in any sense, but we know tradition. I'm calling it out. It is what it is. If you're sensitive about it, okay, you're sensitive, but that's what it is. Too much money, in my opinion, to be spending on that when as a teacher and, you know, someone in the city of Atlanta helping grandparents in these schools in Atlanta pay their rent. the city is sending too much money back and the school system is using too much money for things that are not really reaching the everyday parent and student. So I like to call things as they are. Let's really do better about how we can do this in a common sense way. You brought up a point about men controlling boards, and I want to highlight that there's a shift, and this is an important year for us as a people. It's not a presidential election. Governor races finished this last cycle, but every state is going to have, primarily every state will have a school board election in the majority of its districts. So if we really want to talk about liberation, everybody should be talking about, I'm supporting this candidate. I am supporting someone who is saying we need Black educators. I am supporting someone that's saying we need to have school districts adopt multicultural curriculums. Why? So that we can learn about everybody as opposed to learning about everybody from one culture's perspective. So if we really want to make change in power, we should really be engaged with what school boards are doing, because see, that's local power that's being given to white women that have access in the backing of other people who can say, oh, if you want to go in this direction to do something, we'll have your back to do it. But when you have equity, which means that you have true power and stake in the game, then you have people on these boards to say, no, we need to have school libraries. We need to stop focusing on standardized testing so much and make sure that we actually are funding programming that supports the whole child, which includes supporting the family.
Yes.
But we don't have board members that are well versed in knowing how the system operates, that knows how to connect community organizing to that. And they also know how to play the game. And that's what we lose. We, as people of color, have to have people who know how the system of education operates. We need educators at the table. We need students at the table.
Yes.
But we also need parent voices at the table. We also have to have people who understand how politics work. And then we need people to understand how grassroots organizing works. And we've had some amazing people locally, not a lot, but we have some that have been able to successfully do it. But it goes back to this last question around power. Are we going to invest in assimilation or liberation? And this is a year that if we truly are concerned about Generation Alpha, we will start seeing more organizing locally, collectively, nationally, with our organizations, with the power that we have to get the right people running for school board, to say that we're not going to let big business buy us out again, but we're going to take our pennies, dollars, whatever, savings bonds. You want to trade it, whatever, because I'm trying to knock out every excuse you can say that we can't do it. Yes, we can. We can do it. We got to be willing to do it. And this is a prime year for us to say, okay, white women are dominating education, but let's come in and change these school boards. Let's come in and change these policy directors. Let's come in and change these superintendents, whether they white, Black, or right. And let's get in people who are really invested in the families and the students that we're serving. But are we willing to do it is the question. We can do it, but are we willing to do it? And that's the big thing.
And that's always the hanging question. Are you willing? And then again, I just don't know if people understand the sacrifice. And again, the things that's connected to what you talked about is sacrifice.
That's
all
it.
of that is rooted in a sacrifice.
You preaching. You preaching now. That's sacrifices. I've shared my story before regarding how I lost my certificate, because I was advocating through Atlanta when Brightbeam had that advocacy going, and I lost my certificate because the state was like, who is this teacher that had a contract with our school system talking about the inequities in our school systems and actually giving solutions that work? Because that's what the system does. When they figure out that, oh, you have a solution, we have to minimize your voice. We have to push you out. And then they figured out that, oh, if we push him out, he's like a roach. He still find his way in, and he's still impacting these students, and he's still organizing parents, and he's still honoring and supporting teachers. So yes, you have to be relentless. There has to be you got to be called to be able to do it. And everybody can't. And I respect that, but I want to just shout out your prophecy around speaking to the sacrifice of what people have to be willing to do. And we have to honor people in the grassroots space much better than what we have been, because it's a sacrifice to do this work on the ground when no one is really serving the least of them.
Of our people.
No one is doing that.
Yes. And I talk about that a lot in this space about how who always gets the worst end of the stick, the brunt of the stick are poor Black children. If you are poor and you are Black, in our communities, you're going to get the worst of it. And then who does speak for you? Who is your voice? And you're absolutely right. People who have made the choice, because it's a choice to decide to sacrifice, to protest, to continue to organize. It is a sacrifice. And people wouldn't be willing to do what you did, to say like, my actual certificate, my profession is on the line. People's like, I'm not doing this. Like, I got mouths to feed, or I got a career I want to think about.
Yeah.
Folks
and
are
you
not
gotta hustle.
willing.
You know,
Yes.
it's the hustle. You keep it moving. But it's also the belief. God and the ancestors never left me down. So one of my good colleagues here in Atlanta, when she heard my story, she was like, you went back to your school and taught for free for 2 years? And I said, yeah, because they were forcing me to go. If I was going to ever teach again, I had to go and, you know, I had to outsmart them. I said, I'll just get a degree and then you can't take that away. So I did that route. And while I was doing that, I was like, well, what do I do with this special education program that I just built at this school? Do I drop it? Do I let somebody else try to come in and do what I know they can't do? Because I was called to do this. And it worked out, because normally if you student teach, you don't go to the school that you had been at. They don't normally allow those measures, especially when the state is after you. So I always highlight the power of the ancestors and God, because it was a line for me to be able to teach for 2 years at my school, see my sixth graders now in ninth grade, continue to advocate through Students for Equity, which is a students group under educational entities, but also my first ESOL, that was a pause moment, ESOL student that actually came out of our special education program, tested into the gifted and talented program. He was the first student in our community in that area who already had strikes against him as being Afro-Latina, the language barrier, and having a specific disability. You had it on every end. And was able to test out of special education, go into gifted and talented, be a peer tutor, not just a mentor, but a peer tutor for other kids in our exceptional learning program, and give back. So I challenge my sister to say, yeah, those 2 years, I may not have had a full-time salary, but look at what happened. Look at all of these things. I could count up the cost. My grandparents would tell me this story. What are your receipts? And in life, what receipts do you have? Because we can have all of these accolades from people and all of these honors and titles, but how many lives did you impact? How many lives did you change? How many people did you impact them in such a way where when they could have been fallen on the wayside or died early or gone down a pathway that would have been destruction for them, how many people were you able to turn around and bring it to the light? And it's those receipts from your life work, from teaching, from organizing, that matters. But see, we don't understand that because society teaches us to assimilate into having the big house and the nice car and the degrees and all of these things that we are told to aspire for. But the aspiration really should be to love thy neighbor, to be able to forgive unselfishly, to be able to have family, impact family, love family, build community. But we don't value the teachings of many of these world powers that we would say in the name of a Jesus Christ, or a Buddha or a Allah, who we talk about these powerful figures, but we fail to realize that y'all don't know that these spiritual, religious leaders, global impactors, influencers, they were teachers. Yes. They were teaching people every day. They were on the ground doing grassroots work. But we have taken that and codified that and capitalized and idealized and pacified these things, right? And now we don't focus on the teaching. We don't focus on the teaching aspect. Yes. Globally, we don't focus on the power of teaching. We focus on the power of pimping people for their pain, for their stories, for their experiences, getting as much as we can, getting ahead, living like the Joneses or the Kardashians or the Carters for that matter. I mean,
and even when you say those names, right? Slow this down because we're talking about religion. So you can talk about the Carters or the Kardashians and whoever, but you can also talk about T.D. Jakes and Creflo Dollar, right? These people are all.
I like to challenge the black church. Now, y'all tune in to the I Wear Morning Show. I'm challenging the black church too, because again, it's spirituality and then it's the religious factors. And the spirituality calls us to, every black church should have a soup kitchen, a food bank, a school, a clinic or infirmary to be able to say, okay, you can't get to the emergency room. Here's what we could come in and do. Because that's what our ancestors did. My great grandmothers were hospice care before there were hospice. When we knew somebody was transitioning, somebody was sick, they would go in, they would have their garments on with that. They had to,
but
never came out ill.
Network. You're speaking about networking. You're speaking about community and all of the things that allow people to sacrifice, right?
Community building, though.
Yes.
See,
yes.
I talked about Mr. Gordon community was my
building,
teacher.
Nation building.
But he was a community builder. He knew his calling of teaching. He knew the power of teaching. And so, yes, he inspired me to be a teacher, but he taught me to be a community builder. He took those lessons and stories from my great grandparents and said, here is how you can put this into practice. Here is how you can go out and in this time do the work that they were doing to get you to where you are. And now you're going to go and do that work for the next generation. But see, who is teaching our kids to be community builders? We're teaching our kids to go out and pass these standardized tests and to have on the new kicks and the famous TikTok, because that's what society is telling us to do.
Oh, what the world would be without capitalism, right? So if you think about that, right? A lot of things you're talking about and pointing to, oh, what the world would be without the idealization of capitalism.
You know, Whitney was saying that love is what makes the world go round, but we know that we have a whole system and whole mentality that tells us that it's money that makes the world go round. And so again, it's that assimilation of liberation. I can love money, but not have the love of money be what guides my heart, what guides my spirit, what guides my decisions to say, oh, well, this impacts the have-nots. So it's okay because somebody has to be the have-nots. That's the ideal, right? That's a mentality that we've been taught. So somebody has to be poor, but if it's not my cousins or if it's not the people who I love or connected to me directly, that it's the direct connection, because then we also get fooled by religion of what love really is, because a lot of us are practicing conditional and not unconditional. So even if you go back to
religion and society, both will convince
it teaches us that it doesn't, we're not really practicing the true common sense values of even the religions that are part of the systems that govern us. We're not even really, because they're all rooted in love, but they all speak to unconditional love. But we can't even come together to have a picnic. So how we doing unconditional love? We can't even have a family reunion. The United Nations can't even really throw a block party across the world together and just people dancing, because we can't come together.
We can't.
And I know that may have been a stretch of an analogy, but it's real. I would love for them to throw a block party and get some, international artists to sing and perform and donate money to local schools and children programs. Right. That's my vision of the world. But I would love for them to pull something like that off.
Jason said, let the UN come together and throw block parties in every hood. Okay.
In every hood. I mean, if y'all got the power, I'm just saying, y'all got the power. We know y'all got the money. I mean, y'all stole it from my ancestors, so we know y'all got the money. Like, just one time, just somebody do something innovative, just something radical, just one time. Like, in the time that it's just over the years, is one time.
We'll be waiting on that. Don't hold your breath.
Don't hold your breath. Keep hope alive, though. But don't hold your breath.
You got to keep hope alive. That's what keeps our people who's striving and thriving, honey. You got dealing on hope. Okay.
Yes, dealing on hope.
Dealing on hope. But you make some super, super outstanding points about all of that, and with that, it just makes me think. Right, the level of intelligence, involvement, and passion. Why do people seek to omit Black men's voices out of the conversation?
Well, we know that. We know the answer to that. An educated Black man is one of the most dangerous beings because sisters have a different, there is a difference. Sisters have a difference. It's like even in teaching children, I always had to work a little bit more with my boys who needed that mentorship. They yearned for that because they wanted to be they wanted to show their intelligence. But it's not acceptable for Black men. And I just have to be honest about that. It isn't. It's not acceptable by any means necessary. It really isn't. When we think about Black boys and when they try to hold the door open for girls, oh, you too soft. Why are you doing that? When they try to be intelligent and speak smart, why are you trying to be white? Oh, you this. Oh, you that. So it's the pressure. And this doesn't just come from society. This comes from the hood. This comes from within our own unit because we have been conditioned and told that Black men have to show up in a certain way. I'll say this as well. The analogy that I give to my students. Everybody wants a Black thug. Everybody wants a Black thug for a lot of reasons that I will not say on this podcast, but we know the reasons and we got to be honest about those reasons. And that's what we want Black boys to be. But then when they get in trouble or then when trouble finds them, oh, we want to say we wish they took a different pathway, but did we really want that? And I talk to this with my Black girls because I say, why just test me. If this fails, then we go ride and go to the movies. And
that's mind-boggling to me, though. And maybe because I'm a different breed of a woman. I don't want no thug. Never did. My husband ain't no thug, honey. And that's on purpose. And what I like to tell people, changed. And what I like to tell people about that, though, is like, he ain't no punk, right? Like, it's not like somebody come for me. He don't fool
because thugs can show up in different forms, too. And see, when girls, when my Black girls and females, they hear me as a male teaching them, I'm trying to help y'all the game. Because see, now I'm just reassuring you of the power that you already have. And it's not just the power between your legs. Now, I may not say that to them, but I'm trying to teach them that that's what society is telling you. And that could be a power. I ain't knocking that. I'm not saying that either. But what I'm saying is that
it's important
you
for
have
them to
a
hear
different,
that from a man too.
Yes, you have a different power. And this is the test that I give them. Y'all go and y'all start saying, oh, I don't want to see your dirty drawers. Why you got your pants down? Why my school don't have to deal with that? Because they know at the end of the day, for the young men that are trying to be like, I got the girls, they want you to show up in a certain way. Now, you may be in the community and show up that way, but you will see them. And I notice the boys do it when they come around the young ladies, they pull those pants up. And when they come around teachers or adults, they pull those pants up because it's still a part of them that, okay, I still want to give off this image, but now I have a different respect for these young ladies and I have a different respect for adults. But see, when we couldn't reach the young boys, I said, you know what, let me stop spinning my wheels because if I keep doing the same thing, then I'm retarded. So let me try a different avenue. So I started trying it with my young girls and then I empowered them to already use the power that they had. And now they're changing the game. So see, we have to be also willing to think outside of the box with these conversations and why and how we're reaching our young people, specifically our Black boys. We got to be innovative to reach them because if they're educated and now they're talking about, yeah, I can play basketball, but I can own the basketball team too. See, they're not having those conversations. They're having a lot of conversations around, let me improve my skill, let me play. But see, nobody is really having the conversations with them about, I can play and be a master player and I can coach and I can have ownership in the team, but then I can also be coaching my son's little league team too. I can also have ownership in that. We can create our own league. So trying to get our young boys to see that you can also create the things that you want and not just become a workhorse or slave in the sense of the mind and the body. But, you know, we can talk about this all day. But, yeah, that's it. Using what we have to make change. And you got to be intentional.
Again, but I think it's so powerful for some of these conversations to be coming from a Black male. And a Black man's voice to be centered in some of these conversations. And I don't think we talk enough about how much influence, more of the Black male voice will influence our young ladies. I think we do talk a lot about the power of like Black mothers, and their influence on Black men, especially Black boys. But I think that one of the conversations that don't happen enough, just as we talk about Black fatherhood, the influence and the impact of Black fathers and how healthy that is for young women to grow up to be healthy young women, to have that. And again, that same thing is absent or omitted from the schoolhouse. If you really don't have a bunch of Black male influence in your academic education, I can't help but wonder the things that are lacking or missing because of the lack of inclusion of Black men in those spaces.
Yeah.
What perspectives are young people drawing from that? What are they missing out on by not having access to Black men, educated Black men,
Black men in different spaces too. You know, I love Black men who are in the health education space, but too often we're pushed into that. We need to be in special education. We need to be in STEM classes, advanced math, advanced engineering, advanced technology. We need Black men teaching those areas. And I got a short story. I was in Arizona for MPU earlier this year, and I had a Black man who was a Black electrical engineer, took me to two places. I've been sharing this story recently. He took me to a McDonald's completely ran by robots. Okay, so that's a wake up call for us to know that if it's McDonald's, it's coming to Walgreens, it's coming to Dollar General, it's coming to Walmart, it's coming to Home Depot soon and very soon. He also took me by an area where Teslas are flying. And then as we were having a conversation about STEM and some of the areas that I just mentioned that we need more Black men, especially in social work, counseling, social emotional learning, he talked about psychology and the mental, emotional impact on the way that Black boys learn in schools and how all of our data, and let me also shout out you and your conversations on data in our public schools. And I want to connect this to admire the conversations that you've had on this platform. This brother talked to me about the impact of that data on Black boys. And he said, now, everything that you told me, imagine these Black boys. And I want you to hear this from my perspective as someone who's working as an engineer and as a psychologist. These Black boys are going into a space where they don't see Black men in various spaces. They're being told constantly that they're Title I, which everybody knows means less than, lower class, underprivileged. They're being told that they can't read, that they can't add, that they can't behave, that they can't think. They're not given spaces to create because arts programs are being taken away. When they try to implement music in the classroom, you're too loud. It's too gaudy. It's too ghetto. It's not appropriate. Silence yourself. Be quiet. Sit down. Stand in the line. Go here. Do this. Oh, you know you can't be that. Why don't you do this? You want recess, but you can't read this book, so you can't go play basketball. So all of these things that he pictured in the daily life of a Black boy going into a public school or a public entity for learning, and we want them to thrive. We want them to emotionally be heavy. When that brother broke down the emotional weight of what Black children, but Black boys specifically are carrying, we want them to pick up a book and read on grade level and beyond after the emotional weight, not just the academic and the physicality of it, but the emotional weight of what data alone is doing to Black boys in public education. And then we want them to get out here and create a car that's flying in the sky. So we have to be realistic about these settings that we're putting our children in and how they are being conditioned not to learn, because we have to unlearn that in order to get them to the place where they're creating the cities in the skies and not being left down in the land below.
Yes. And for folks who are listening to the podcast, is how are you contributing or not contributing to that, or helping to build better environments to put our young Black boys in? I think about that a lot. You know, if you're a teacher and you're an educator, what kind of environment are you creating, not only in your classroom, but what kind of environment are you helping to create within your school community? Yeah. And for parents listening, I always encourage parents to be way more critical, ask way more questions about the environment that your kids are in. At times we think that these schools are the ones who have the power. So we just send our kids off to school, go to work, think that everything is all good. No, what are they teaching your child? How are they treating your child? Yeah. And that's because, you know, sometimes these whack behind schools are the norm. Unacceptable. Unacceptable.
You put in okay, let's go down this road right quick. Cause I'm listening to my kids' head. I'm listening to their minds in my head about, okay, you off script. You not following the time limit. So I'm trying to be mindful of time. So you just let me know, but I want to highlight parent voice in this because it's very important. One of the things I tell parents in my work with MPU is that teachers and parents, we got to have better relationships, because a lot of times teachers aren't able to share what's really going on in the school, and parents have no clue that this is really impacting my child this way, which is why through educational entities, we're elevating the voices of teachers to really share the impacts of not having a multicultural curriculum, not having curriculums designed to actually empower Black and brown youth to not go out and be good factory workers. Because see, that's the big thing that is kind of like the smoke and mirror that parents are like, oh, the school looks good and they're going on a field trip out the year and they got bright colors and they have nice uniforms, but they don't see how that's playing into the prison to school pipeline. Because yes, they sell you the dream that, oh, if you're in your community school, you're only training your child to go work at McDonald's. But they don't really show you that, well, we're just really training your child to have a desk job at the Amazon warehouse, and they may have to work in the Amazon warehouse. But we're not saying that for a lot of our schools that have the bright colors and uniforms and have the appearance that we're doing what's good for children. What I would say to parents is you got to be engaged with asking the right questions. And if you don't know how to do that, there's always a ram in the bush. I tell parents this, it's almost like you got to vet the programs you're putting your kids in, the schools, the after school programs, the church ministries, the youth pastors, anybody connected with your kids. Do your research on these people. And if you can't do it, find that person in the village, because I can promise you there's a Maritza Gertie, there's a me, there's a Tanya Richards Buford. There are people like us in your community that can say, hey, that's a nice church. They're doing some great things, but I would not put my kids in any of their programs. Just as a nice gesture, just to be mindful. You may want to be mindful of this, especially parents that are raising their kids in everyday communities. I hate to say lower income because your income doesn't make your community. That's a stigma for the system, but are in everyday communities where they're everyday working people. And a lot of times we are targeted by everyone. We're targeted by everyone. There is no one left out of that. Targeted by everyone, because there's some bad in all of the systems. So you got to be mindful.
And I want to say this, and we do have to wrap in a sec, but parents need to stop accepting this notion of this is better than what I had, or this is better than what was there. And that's why we're targeted. Because if you're in communities that are, like you said, not necessarily low income, but low funded or low invested in, right? Because that's what we live in. Yeah. I can make a lot of money, but my community there's low investment in my community, is low resources because the government has decided to fund my neighborhood or my schools a certain way, right? There's a lack of control there. But when they come in shining these, toting these nice shiny schools, oh, but this is better than what you had. Yeah, but it still sucks to a degree. So parents have to stop this notion of accepting, oh, this is better than what you had. And you lucky this is here. And I'm here because I gave you better than what was here. We have to stop accepting that. And we have to understand that these people who are serving our children, and I use the word serve because they are of service. And when you are of service, that means that you are serving and you are committed to providing a certain level of quality service to the customer. I am the consumer. And I don't think parents take on that.
That's good.
That persona.
That empowerment piece, yes. Send them over to us. We'll help them get there. I want to say one quick thing. It takes me back to the analogy that we use with our students. And I share this with parents. And, sometimes they get a little offended by it, but it's the truth. It's the Bugs Bunny analogy in Looney Tunes. The dangling carrot. Y'all remember every time that carrot was dangled, it was always presented in a nice, shiny, beautiful setting, atmosphere. It's the dangling carrot. But it had the same effect that it's still going to entrap you in some way. So don't get caught on chasing after the dangling carrot, because no matter how shiny, how good, how polished, how, welcoming it may seem, it's still a dangling carrot. And parents, you got to beware of the dangling carrot.
Yes. I love that. Before we go, I just want to give you space and time to thank a Black teacher or thank some Black teachers before we get out of here.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to definitely start off by, I'm just going to thank all of my family members. I'm just going to say all of my family. Thank y'all. Love y'all for being educators. But I want to highlight the Black male educators that we just honored this year at the Capitol here at Georgia. Jonathan Jukes, Kedar Whittle. We had Rashard Leonard, Hubert Jackson. Yes, we honored a couple of these brothers who have been doing some phenomenal things in their schools. And I'm just thankful that they are in positions to work with kids in every level. 3 of the brothers are in elementary school. We had middle school, we had high school, and then we had one brother who is in the higher ed community aspect, working with the community and teaching and providing service. So it was an honor being able to elevate these brothers' voices and highlight that there are some great Black teachers out here who are men doing some phenomenal things in and out of the classroom. So those are the brothers, those are the teachers who I would thank and shout out for this segment.
Perfect. Jason, it has been a pleasure having you on. I mean, it was phenomenal. Like, great conversation. We're going to definitely have to have you back. Any parting words to our co-conspirators out there? Any parting words? Listen,
we all play a part. Everybody can do something, whether it's reading with kids, supporting organizations that are, just get connected. Don't be disconnected. Be willing to challenge, what you've been taught. Be willing to unlearn and relearn, because there's a lot of work for us to do in that space as well. But also have an open heart to meet people where they are. Last words, and I hope I come back.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you for all our co-conspirators out there for watching. Building the Black Educator Pipeline is hosted by the Center for Black Educator Development with the help of our partner, Bright Beam. Subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcast. We'll see you here next time. Peace, everybody.